Hi, everyone. It's Kelly from the Hub here today with our friend Brittany, who
Hi,
is
Kelly.
with us. Hello. She is normally with us, of course, from El Hop, but today she is with us again to talk about hiking the Appalachian Trail. So, you guys don't know this, but it's been a long time since Brittany and I have gotten together to talk about this. So, we have to mentally catch up with each other. So, how are you there, my friend?
I'm good. How are you?
Delicious, delightful, delicious. I'm really that far gone. Yep, I'm that far gone.
I'm going to cut you off from Zoom soon.
Oh, you're gonna have to cut me off. It's been one of those days. Okay, so the last time we were talking about how do you prepare yourself for doing this 5.5 month, we just say 6 month event. And there's three categories that I want to talk about in this. How do you prepare? The first one is equipment. So, okay, even if you're not a professional hiker, because only you are. In this duo we have right here, you're the professional. I'm the one that is, I'm not even a glamper. I haven't camped since I don't know, a long, long time. So I know how to camp when you have like a vehicle that transports that stuff. When you have to put it on your back, I don't even, I think that's what donkeys are for. So I don't, how do you even narrow it down? So you've been so good about saying, well, you just go off the trail and you just stop over somewhere. Is that what you do with your equipment too?
Well, it's helpful to have a pretty good sense of the equipment that you'll need before starting the trail, but there are places where you can stop off, and if your equipment breaks, you can get it repaired or you can swap out some of your equipment. We certainly had a couple pieces of equipment that failed along the way because a lot of camping gear is meant to be used on weekends or a week-long trip, but sustained use for 6 months can really take a toll.
Oh, like your stove.
Yeah, I mean, our stove held out just fine, which I was really grateful for. Our tent was actually I would say Christian's sleeping pad was one of the first things that we realized that we had to replace.
Really?
Because we went for like the foam ones because they're relatively inexpensive.
Oh, those like egg cartony ones?
Yeah, the ones that you fold up, they're like gray and yellow.
Yeah.
So those are kind of very entry level gear. And we're like, well, you know what? If we're spending some money over here, so we're not going to spend money on this.
Right.
We'll give it a shot. Turns out that worked fine for me. It did not work out fine for Christian, who is a little bit more of a picky sleeper than I am. So he realized pretty quick that gave him a lot of back and spine pain. So that wasn't going to work for him. So we made it
like thicker or whatever, high techer to make
inflatable.
Oh, or inflatable. Oh.
So there's lots of ones that are like a plastic or silicone. I don't know what equipment or what material it actually is.
Yeah.
But you actually blow it up and it makes like a little mini air mattress.
Oh, so it still compresses, so it's doable. It's not like you're carrying a pool float around with you.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
yep, you definitely deflate it every night, pack it in your pack, and you're good to go. So we didn't do that to start because those are a little bit on the pricier end. But there's this fun thing that you find at a lot of the resupply places and a lot of the hostels. It's called a gearbox. And it's where people drop off stuff that they don't want or that they can't use. It could be food, it could be clothing, it could be gear. So we found this dual cell mattress pad, basically, that turns out it had a hole in one of the sides of it. So we got like a $10 patch kit, and then we ended up getting like an almost $200 mattress sleeping pad that he was able to get for free, basically. So he dropped his pad, which wasn't working well for him, off, and someone else, I assume, picked it up along the way who might have needed it.
So it's like a little swap meet, but no one's there. You just drop it off and somebody else takes it because so like your version worked out swell for you. So someone who is like you could pick it up and be like, bonus plan.
Yeah, someone whose mattress had completely deflated on them a couple of miles back might have really wanted what he dropped off. So it worked out really great. I think half of it got a puncture again later down the trail, but we had the patch kit, so it worked out fine. And since it was the dual cell one, it you at least have some backup. You're not going to be flat on the ground by the end of the night.
Yeah. So tell me something else in like the equipment world that you like you didn't anticipate, or you bought and you didn't end up using, or you used a lot less than you thought you were going to buy, or was a total bomb, or like one of those things, or was like the best thing you ever bought and you couldn't even believe you bought it, or it was like, or any of those kinds of parts.
Let's see. There were a couple things that I carried around that I didn't really use. One of them is a product that's designed especially for women, and that is a funnel that you can use to urinate in the woods.
I've seen those. You just like hold it up to your area, and it's so that you can pee like a man.
Exactly. But turns out they're kind of gross and I didn't really need it. So you can figure out a technique to make it work on your own.
Huh. So did you end up putting yours in the swap box?
No, for whatever reason, I ended up mailing that home. So, and never ended up using that again. Sorry, Mom and Dad.
And I've seen those I've seen those that like women get those for like outdoor festivals or for lots of things. You can like, or if you just are a frequent peer, you can get those for lots of things. That's interesting. Oh, so Mom and Dad bought that for you because they thought, oh no,
I bought that on but I mailed it back to you with some other gear that I wasn't using. I don't think they opened that package until I got back. But
did you write on the outside, don't open? Right. Don't open, there's urine here. No, I think the post office frowns on that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's one of their prohibited substances.
Right, perfume, batteries, urine. Yeah.
Yep.
Who knew? That's funny. Okay, what else?
Let's see, what else didn't I use? I started out with some winter gear. So I had like a heavy coat and some extra pants. So partway through, once I got into like mid-Virginia, I didn't really need that anymore since it was warm enough.
Yeah.
So that I sent back home, but then I had my parents send it back to me once I hit Vermont. So that way, once it got cold again, I would have it.
Yeah, because then you wouldn't need to schlep it the whole way. You could just get it on the flip side. Cool.
Yep.
Cool.
So it's really helpful to have someone like a really good friend or parents or a partner that's willing to help you resupply your gear and ship you stuff when you need to. So they were really great at supporting us throughout the hike.
What was something that you didn't think you would use and you ended up using it all the time?
Oh, interesting. I can't
something
think
sort of like
anything.
inconsequential. And you were like, sure, this came in handy.
I never really used trekking poles that much before the trail. Like I just hadn't really used them. So they're the long sticks that you have in both hands. They've got handles on them and spikes down at the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of look like skiing poles, but without the baskets at the bottom for the snow.
Yeah, so they're more than walking sticks because they really have a spike at the bottom for you to get like more leverage when you're walking.
Yep, they do have a spike. I actually used a rubber cover over mine because those can scratch the rocks, which doesn't sound like a huge deal, but every little bit of wear and tear on the trail kind of adds up. So I used covers on mine. And,
okay.
And that also means that you're not making as much racket as you're walking on the trail. So you can
true.
Life and stuff.
True.
So, but the big thing about those is they can really save a lot of the wear and tear on your knees and hips and ankles because especially as you're going downhill, if you can kind of brace your weight a little bit more, it's very helpful. It's also really helpful for very klutzy people like me who tend to fall a lot. So it's helpful to have something else to catch yourself on.
Oh, I never thought about it that way before. I guess I've seen them more for people who are, I was thinking about it going uphill more to be able to like,
It does give you some leverage too to kind of
yeah,
take
to
some of that.
support you. Yeah.
Mhm, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's really cool. All right.
Well, at first I felt kind of like a giraffe. Like you kind of feel a little awkward and gangly using them, but
Oh, right. Because now you have 4 legs instead of 2 legs, right? Because you're like, whoa, whoa. I totally get the whole giraffe analogy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I get that. Yeah.
yeah, so I don't really use them as I go out for day hiking now since it's kind of overkill, but whenever I'm carrying a really heavy pack, it can really be helpful.
That's
for
true
when I'm
because it
hiking
can
for a while.
counterbalance your weight that way. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's cool. All right. So in terms of preparing, another category I wanted to talk about was family. So when you're gone for 6 months, and also because you did 6 months continuously, you didn't go in and out over time. You did 6 months continuously. So that means there are holidays in there and or birthdays, whatevsies, special events that you missed. You and Christian both missed. So there are 2 families involved. How do you what do you do? How do you prepare your family for we're gone for 6 months? Good luck.
Hopefully gradually. It really depends on your family. And both my and Christian's families have different dynamics, so it looked a little bit different, but it's important to have those conversations to help them understand, especially because, you know, you're doing this dreaming and planning and research and you're spending hours looking at the gear and knowing what you need and anticipating what it's going to be like, but you have to take a step back and not just say, oh, look, I'm doing this and it's really cool. You have to like prepare for but what about the bears? And like, how are you going to get everything you need? And let's think through the logistics and to be mindful of other people's emotions about it who might be a little bit more concerned.
Right. And there's a lot of, there's a lot of stories and news about people who go hiking and they get killed. Or something happens to them and they lose their way and they get physically harmed, or they go missing because they're physically harmed. And whether that's overkill or not, it doesn't matter because that's what's in, okay, let's just say it. That's what's in all of our moms' minds.
Right. And well, those things have happened to some people across different trails. The Appalachian Trail is actually a very safe place. When you look at the amount of people that trek it each year, there are very few deaths, either from wandering off trail and not coming back to assaults, to things like that. To be honest, I think my parents were relieved that I was not going alone, that I was going with my partner. So that was helpful to provide that assurance. But in reality, it was safer than where I was currently living. It's probably safer than where I live now. You just don't think of it in that way. And you just have to be smart about things. You have to make sure that you're thinking ahead, making sure you're treating your food well, so that way it's out of the reach of animals, making sure that you've got enough water, paying attention to your surroundings. You don't want to camp right next to a road where people might pull off and be more likely to instigate trouble. Instead, you want to make sure that you're hiking a couple miles in, so that way there aren't folks that are a little more casual, that might just be stopping in to have a good time for the night.
Right, because if you think about where the Appalachian Trail is, at least through the parts of Pennsylvania that you and I have traveled, there are absolutely pull-offs right next to major roads. So that's not your camping spot. So you got right. And I think
that's your scene and you want to do that, that is totally up to you. I was looking for a good night's sleep after a long day of hiking. So, making sure that you're a couple miles in really helped to accomplish that for me and my partner.
So your advice truly is be thoughtful every day. Be thoughtful about everything that you're doing. And you're right, having that other person to check in and go, that person and you're each checking each other. Not to be sassy with each other, but the food, because that's how you have to do that. at
Mhm.
every moment. All right.
Yeah, and sometimes it was even more of a, you know what, let's keep going a couple extra miles and get up to the top of the mountain to hike or to camp for the night. I was terrified of camping up at the top of a mountain for the first probably month or so on the trail.
Hmm.
I'm like, well, what if a storm hits? What if this?
Right.
What if that? And while I certainly don't advocate for camping above tree line,
Yep.
there can be something incredibly beautiful about making sure that you've got enough water, making sure that you've got a place where you can string up your bear bag, but camping at the top of a mountain and seeing the sunset and the sunrise the next morning, like that's unbelievable, and an experience that I'm really glad I didn't miss because I was too scared about a storm rolling in.
That's really cool. That's awesome. And the last part about being prepared is finances. Something
Mhm.
that for people like me, the dreamer, and your husband, you said, Christian, I wouldn't have, it would have been like really low on my list to think about. Thank goodness we have you, because you would have been, you're like, well, of course we have to think about those things. So, like, how, so whether you had a house or an apartment or whatever, like rent or mortgage has to be paid,
Mhm.
electric has to be paid, water, you're gone for 6 months, water has to be paid, phone has to be paid, all the things. Like, you're not buying groceries because you're doing that on the fly. How are you paying, and if you're deferring student loans or you didn't have student loans or whatever, how are you paying your bills while your feet are trekking through just Stone Mountain, Georgia?
Yeah, it's something that's really important to think about.
Yeah.
We did
Carrier
our best.
pigeon's not an option.
Right. We did our best to minimize our off-trail expenses as much as possible. So we had both quit our jobs, so we didn't have any income coming in. But we had also just finished grad school, so we didn't have to start paying on those loans right away. So that kind of gave us a little window. We were relocating after we got off the trail, so we ended up terminating our lease, and so we didn't have that ongoing overhead, and we were able to store our belongings, but still had health insurance, still had cell phones, still had some expenses that we needed to make sure that we were accounting for. Plus there's your on-trail expenses as well. So you need to make sure that you've got enough budgeted for the type of trek you want to do. So for some people, that means they're going to buy everything at Costco ahead of time and mail it to themselves, and they'll have all of that done ahead of time, and they're not going to anticipate a lot of expenses while they're on the trail. But we wanted to also enjoy some of the trail culture that's in the trail towns as well. So we stayed at shelters we stayed at hostels some nights, which you have to pay to sleep there, maybe pay to shower, pay for a hot meal. Sometimes you go into town and stay for 2 nights. It's called zeroing, to allow your body a chance to rest and recover and to get supplies, stop by the laundromat, wash your clothes. So you need to budget for that as well as anticipating an increased appetite. Once you're hiking for a couple of weeks, you eat so much food, and you can get a lot of really cheap, high calorie food that you can eat on the trail, but you'll also probably want to budget for that pizza when you're in town, as well as, the all you can eat Chinese buffet. That's always a hiker favorite. Any buffet is typically a favorite. I'm not sure how those establishments make much of a profit if they're frequently hit by hikers, but they certainly are beloved. So they say to budget, I believe, at least when we did it, $1 to $2 per person per mile. So that was more than I had anticipated spending on the trail, but I was really glad that I had that cushion, so that way I could make the choices that I wanted to make when I was on the trail. So
$1 to $2 per person per mile.
So for us, that was about $8,000.
That seems like a lot more than I thought.
Mm-hmm. So we didn't spend the full amount, but we spent more than I thought we would, and it allowed us to replace our tent when we needed to. One night, I think it was in North Carolina, we had about a sideways rain and realized that our tent was not up for what we thought it was up for. We just used the tent that we had around because we didn't want to invest a lot of money in all new gear.
Yeah.
Turns out that our 5-year-old Kelty tent just wasn't up for the trip. So luckily the next day we were headed into a small town and there was an outfitter there and we could spend a couple $100 on a tent that ended up being a little bit lighter, a little bit more durable. It was a great buy, but if I hadn't built in some of those reserves, it would have been really difficult to make that work.
Wow.
We also ended up staying more nights in hostels as well as in cheap motels, just to allow our bodies some time to rest and recover, and it became important more and more as we went north and as our bodies kind of got worn out a little bit from all that constant exercise. And I was really glad that we had built that in.
Wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. So next time when we get together, we're going to be talking about, I've got some questions for Brittany that we really have to talk about that are personal, but when you're gone for 6 months, you just got to ask those questions because there are things you got to know. And then I'm going to ask some other kinds of questions about regrets, best things she learned, and then she's going to show us some pictures, which is the best thing in the whole world. So that's how we're going to end. So last one is next week. Can't wait to see you all. I hope you've had a wonderful time with this. Aren't you learning so much? It's so great. Brittany, as
I hope
always,
you all are getting out hiking too. I hope this is sparking the bug.
We are going to French Creek this weekend, which is one of my favorite little local parks around here. I love it. It sort of spans 2 different counties. It's one of my favorite places to go. Love it, love it, love it.
Beautiful. I love French Creek.
Yeah, good. Oh, I'm so glad. We may run into you. Thank you, my friend, physically
Thanks, Kelly.
and metaphorically. Very cool. See you, my friend. See you,
Bye.
everybody.